That was very exciting, and I think there's a couple things I took away from that. And you see, all morning. A couple things I took about that is that the brand is a platform rooted in authentic truth. And we've been talking about this concept of the brand and what it actually means. And your authentic truth, when you take it back, is what's going to be your value proposition in delivering the right customer experience. Because you're doing not just anything, you're not just innovating. I was talking with a group at the lunch break, and we talked, there you are, we talked about responsible innovation, right? So you're really thinking about what are you trying to deliver on that value proposition. Too much of me talking. I want to invite our next guest in our last formal session for the day about elevating the customer experience through people-centric leadership. And I think I was poking Derek in our session a little bit earlier on, how do we get leadership to? How do we get leadership to? What is it about leadership? And it's something that I've talked about. Of all the things we talked about today, it's actually going to be about leadership, bold leadership that's really going to get us to where we need to get. So please let me introduce the next speaker, who's going to talk about how to communicate the vision and purpose behind change. Tina Sarkar-Thompson, Assistant Vice President, Human Resources at the ROM. Give her a hand. Nice to meet you.
Okay.
Yep. That light's a little bit bright. Is that possible to turn?
Could we just turn that light down a little bit, please?
Is that possible?
That one, please. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Tina, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And it's great to have you on stage, because this is a really, really important topic, yeah? About people and how we really put people at the heart of what we're doing. So maybe before we dive into that, maybe I could just give you the opportunity to introduce yourself to the audience.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Tina Sarkar-Thompson. I'm currently the Assistant Vice President at the Royal Ontario Museum. I've been at ROM tomorrow will be my 2-year anniversary. So,
congratulations.
Thank you. And prior to that, I was at Trinity College at U of T for 4 years, and at the Canadian National Institute for the Blind, CNIB, for 8.5. So I like to work for organizations that are century plus, apparently, and like acronyms, because prior to CNIB, I was at TMU, Toronto Metropolitan University. So,
great. So a wealth of experiences there. And just as a side note, if you ever want any tips around Disney cruises, I think Tina's got an expertise around that as well. Yeah. So Tina, when we were chatting just before we came up here, you raised the importance of why, yeah, and the need for people to understand the why. So talk a little bit about, why your experience around, how important understanding that why is.
So as I mentioned, I've worked for the last 3 organizations I've worked for, been century plus organizations. At CNIB, I had the really unique opportunity to be there when we reached our 100th anniversary, and how often does one get to experience that? And one of the great things about a lot of long-term organizations is you have a lot of long-term employees, which is great. They have institutional knowledge, they have a passion for the work that they do, but sometimes the challenge is change is hard. Mm-hmm. But we know that, we know from life, and we know from research and our own experiences that in general, people find change hard. So when, as an organization, as a leader, whether it be at the senior level of an organization or department head, there is change that you've been tasked with or charged with leading. I've learned that the key component to success, well, there's a few, but I know we'll get there, but is helping those that are involved, in this case, the employees, understand the why. And it really needs to be about the communication. So for example, I'll give you 2 examples. Okay. So while I was at CNIB, we underwent a massive change. So at the time, we were one of the few or only charities, we were at the time providing health care. So for example, we provided vision rehab rehabilitation services to our clients. So you'll hear me use today term client, visitor, customer interchangeably, right? All the same students even, all of the people that we serve. And so when we embarked on the strategic plan that was called Path to Change, it was lobbying the healthcare systems across the country in the various provinces to take on the vision rehab piece. Because at the time, for example, if you broke your arm, you'd go to the hospital. You'd get rehab through your healthcare system, not a charity. So that was a massive undertaking. And so we had to we had to explain that to all of the stakeholders, including our staff. And one of the things that we did that was different for me with working with the leadership at the time, which was, I think, fantastic, and I've taken it with me, is up until that point, we've all worked for organizations that have strategic plans. Great, okay, as an employee, we know the strategic plan. But how many people could actually say, oh, I know as a customer service representative or an HR person or a finance person, how I fit into that strategic plan. So we started with our staff. We went on a roadshow, talked about the strategic plan, how it rolled into an operational plan, and then specifically for either that department or that division, and how, so then by the end of the day, Tina would know that, as an HR generalist, how I fit in, because I wasn't the person interacting with the clients, but I think that's the key point. It's the why, right?
Yeah, so I mean, lots of people here are thinking about experience-led activities, improvements, which ultimately are changes. And I'm sure that, lots of us here have also experienced that situation when the strategy plan gets done, whatever, at some point in the year, and then like a tablet of stone, it gets passed. Yeah?
Yes.
Okay? And eureka, I'm supposed to understand everything associated with that. But you're talking about something that's quite different. You're talking about getting it to a level where I, as an individual, understand my role in delivering that plan.
Exactly, because delivering great customer experience is the responsibility of everybody. It's not just the responsibility of your customer service team or your visitor experience team or your student services team, whatever that group of people it is. It's everybody from front of house to back of house and in between. So I can give you another example with ROM, what we've done.
Please. Yeah.
So at ROM, over time, so ROM launched their current strategic plan, moving towards what we call a 21st Century Museum a number of years ago. So that's really shifting, museums sort of being that stuffy place where there's artifacts and you go in and you see things and there is somebody that is telling you about how you should feel, how you should think about these artifacts. 21st Century Museum really is about, one of the components is about having that visitor-centric mindset. Mm-hmm. So when it came to our customer service team, our relations team, we really moved from what we call from cashier to concierge. So before you'd go into, if you went to the ROM, say 5 years ago, you'd go in, there's people at the counter, there are kiosks, you buy your ticket, and off you go. Now, we've removed the counter, brought the people out from behind the counter so that they are interacting more fulsome with our visitors. How can I help you today? What can I do to make your experience here at the ROM great? Are you visiting any other sites in the city? But that required a major shift in the type of people that we were looking for. Well, sorry, maybe not the type of people, the type of skill set that we were looking for in terms of what that team had. So it involved communication to not only with the unions, with stakeholders at all levels, because we too have long-term employees, long-term donors, etc. So, yeah.
But I like that shift in mindset. Yeah, from cashier to concierge. If you think about a concierge, that's somebody that is there to help you. That's somebody who's there to meet your needs. That's somebody who's there to support you. Yeah. Whereas if I've got a cashier in my mind, I've got a very different set of attributes. Yeah, that are coming up. But you're talking about the same people in the same roles in the organization, but people understanding that their role in delivering that experience actually changes. Yeah?
Well, Kate talked about performance brands, right, and how kids made that shift. So it was something similar that we did. We looked at brands like, you mentioned Disney, only because I just came back from a Disney cruise. But as an organization, we looked at brands like Disney, at like Nike, like Apple. What are Starbucks? Like what do they do to engage their visitors, to engage their customers, and what has made them really great brand ambassadors? And we modeled a lot of what we did based on what some greats that have gone before us have done.
So that's interesting, isn't it? I mean, just for a minute, that a museum is turning to an entertainment company, is turning to a cafe, culture, is turning to very, very different industries to actually see how they thought about the customer.
Exactly.
As opposed to, we'll go to, I don't know, Smithsonian, or we'll go to, the V&A in London, or whatever, you happen to turn.
And we still have that, yes, we have some knowledge, but also what's become key, when we talk about the visitor-centric mindset, it's like, okay, so how you experience whatever the exhibit is and how I experience it may be different. So then how can we as ROM help meet both of your needs? How can you also share with us what's been your experience? Because that really, I think, really changing sort of how we are more part of being a community hub. We are, we're on our way there. Many people may know that we're in the process of a multi-year major renovation, and part of that will be seeing that visitor-centric piece to fruition. So right now, our visitor experience concierges are out on the floor when you come in, but the new redesigned space will also become more welcoming.
So, I mean, I'm really liking this sort of, you're challenging my thinking in terms of how we go down this. I'd like to just probe for a minute around the area you talked. You've got lots of tenured staff, colleagues. I would imagine you've got potentially a unionized environment around it. You've got a series of things that many people may say are challenging in terms of actually being able to effect the level of change that you're talking about. But so how did you go about winning their support, gaining their support, getting their involvement around it?
So you're absolutely right. We do have a big percentage of our employees, and of course the stats escape me in the moment, that have been there 10, 15 years plus, but we also have a fair number of fairly new employees, 5 to 10 years or less. We have 3 unions, 4 collective agreements. Okay. So very heavily unionized, as well as non-unionized groups. So you're right, it is a challenge. So as we embark on any kind of change, we make sure that, so communication, I think, is so yes, the why is important, but the other piece is the communication piece. And we need to, when we're embarking on any kind of change, communicate at all levels and to all levels, and meeting people where they're at. So versus it being maybe the traditional top-down, we are doing this, here you go, and you're stuck with it. Instead, what we did is we had those conversations early. We engaged the unions very early on. So things are changing. This is what we're thinking. This is what we're going to be doing. And I think another key component to success is really engaging those naysayers, right? Sometimes when you have long-term employees or people that have been in very traditional careers, there's a certain way of doing things, but often your naysayers can become your biggest champions for a couple of reasons. One, they actually learn the value of change because they're actually involved in it, and they help communicate that to their peers and their colleagues. Two, they often will show you gaps as leaders may not realize because you're so far removed from that.
So, I mean, I think there's a couple of things for me that are really quite interesting in this, Tina. You're talking about the visitor's experience. Let's take ROM as a minute. You're talking about the visitor's experience. You're understanding that actually, I want a different experience now. I want a personal experience, and the experience that I value is different to the experience that my wife values or my 15-year-old son, would value in coming into that. And we individually are starting to want more and more personalized experiences, So as you start to understand that journey, you're also then, it sounds as though what you're doing is you're also engaging and working with colleagues to understand their role in delivering those key parts of the journey. So cashier to concierge, I think, is a great example of actually, we've got that front of house activity. It's up to us what we do in terms of how we create that experience, and why not change it from it's X dollars, to come in, to a concierge, type experience. So you're really deliberately designing a set of experiences.
And to do that, you need to sometimes look at the roles and the job descriptions and make sure that your people strategy or your HR strategy is aligned with your visitor experience strategy as well as your overall strategic plan. And even beyond, say, for example, the visitor experience, it's like we also have a very robust learning department where we create and develop and work with our community partners to develop programs not just for schools, but for members of the community. So again, listening and hearing, like what is it that people want.
Great. So the people that are helping shape that experience are not just, they're your staff, but they're also visitors, they're also communities, they're also, the whole stakeholder
and volunteers.
Group.
We have a very large volunteer department too that helps support all of this.
And what's interesting is I'm sure many people are sitting with that level of complexity as well. It's taking that group of stakeholders and inviting them in and inviting them to help shape the success that you have.
100%. So again, it's about bringing people in early, communicating often, and I think also having, sometimes when you're at a new stage in development, people are reticent to maybe say that, oh, I don't know, right? I don't know the answer to that. But I think it's okay to say, you know what, I don't know the answer to that. Or, you know what, I can't share that with you right now, but when I can, we will. And I think that my colleagues often hear me say that, it's really important to be candid and transparent. And when you go into an organization that maybe historically hadn't been like that, but then that mindset shifts, it changes the types of conversations you have with people. And I think it helps people relate to each other better, like whether it be union versus union versus leadership versus visitors versus volunteers. So, and I think it really opens the door for that common ground that everybody does have and share.
So maybe let's just stay with this for a minute, because there's a couple of things that you've touched on that I wanted to just come back to. You talked about you may need to recruit different people. So I know you invest heavily in learning and development and supporting the growth of colleagues, but it sounded as though you also recognized that maybe we need different skills.
Exactly. So, for example, if we go from the cashier perspective, at the time it was people that were, people have good numeracy skills, being able to do data entry, provide you with tickets. Now we've moved to self-serve kiosks, where people can go and buy their own tickets, but now that we've taken people out from behind the desk, they're standing all day, different physical requirements. They're interacting with employees. People that have more of a sales mindset, a customer service orientation. And you know what, a lot of the people that we had, a lot of people in these roles are those part-time roles, student jobs, type of things. We retained a lot of people because that was really who they were. They really liked that service piece. And for others that felt that it wasn't, their fit, they didn't maybe reapply next time their contract was due. But we've been able to attract a really good, robust team that takes a lot of pride in dealing with our visitors, have lots of great stories, make lots of good connections.
And I guess that, that's one of you talk about the vulnerability that people might see going through the change. I mean, for some people it will be, I get that, I can see where I fit in. For others it might be, actually, I can see with the changes that I'm better served being somewhere else. Yeah.
And that's okay, right? Because it's like, you know what, thank you for the time and service that you've given us, but we support you as you move on. And for those that are willing to stay with us and see us through the journey, I mentioned we're about 80-85% there. It's similar to, again, like how Kate was saying, like it takes time. We've been on this path for just over 2 years, and we've still got a little bit ways to go.
But you're shaping a consistent culture. You're shaping what you want ROM to be in the future.
Exactly. And so I think, and then part of that really does help drive engagement. We haven't, we're in the midst of an employee engagement survey, which we haven't done for a while. People are excited. We've had so far a good response rate, which sometimes you wonder when you haven't done it in a really long time. And so we're excited because we also know that even if there's areas of opportunity, the staff know that they'll be involved in helping shape whatever change comes.
And that's a really interesting piece, isn't it? No matter where I work, if I'm asked for feedback, I'm more likely to give it in an environment where I see the organization, the leadership, the whoever, acting on that, valuing it and taking it, and being, so whether I work in a museum or whether I work in a municipality or wherever I work, if I'm asked for feedback around that, and it's being seen, actively used, then the quality goes up, in terms of what I'm prepared to share.
Exactly, and I think part of our role as leaders is we're not going to be able to action everything at once, right? And but being able to say, okay, you know what, these are the priorities that we're going to focus on, but we will. These are the other things that are there, right? Again, it goes back to the communicating and being candid and transparent.
All right. So, some key messages coming out of that, but maybe let me just open the floor to see if there's some questions that anybody has around this. One in the middle.
I just am curious for a bit more specifics. I was like nodding along as you were like, we engaged the naysayers. I'm curious to know, what does that actually look like in practice? What does engaging the naysayers look like?
So for example, just when I was at CNIB, for example, we actually implemented an employee engagement survey for the first time. It was one of the first things I did when I got there. And we knew that we had some issues. We knew that we were going to create what we called action teams, which was a cross-functional group, employees, managers, leaders at different levels. So while we asked employees to volunteer, we also said, we know that, so-and-so is always saying no to this, or why are we doing this, and how does this affect me? So we purposely went and asked some of those people, would you like to be a part of this team? Would you, or that team? Would you like to help co-chair that team, right? And we got some no's, but honestly, we probably had 90% yeses. So you would think that maybe somebody who's being negative would be like, what's the point? But when you actually turn around and say, okay, so how can you help? Can you help us? They buy in.
Yeah, so giving people really practical opportunities to contribute.
Exactly. Yes.
Great.
But they become one of the change agents.
Other questions? Okay. Well, Tina, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
You.
Really appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you, Tina.